Hello boys and girls, and welcome to this video tutorial that I decided to do on blending coloured pencils. Now the reason I've called this part 1 is because I hope to do a series of these, because there's a lot of different ways to blend coloured pencils and there's a lot of different techniques that I use personally. I'm just, if you can hear little footsteps, that's Jessie meandering in the background. I'm just making some circles here with a protractor type thing. And now I'm just kneading out the lines a bit with a kneaded eraser. Now a lot of these drawers, artists that you see that do these fantastic drawings freehand, this is the reason why it looks freehand, because they've wiped out the lines that they actually drew, so they can see them but you can't on the screen, so it looks like they're actually drawing freehand when they're not. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because a lot of beginning artists are perplexed by these guys and think, well, God, if they can draw like that freehand, what chance have I got? But they don't draw freehand. Probably 1% of artists can do that. You've got to be really skillful to be able to do that. And if anybody's doing a portrait, say of Clint Eastwood, and it comes out perfectly like Clint Eastwood, and they started on blank paper, it wasn't blank paper. Their drawing was there, their base drawing, but they just rubbed it out so they can barely see it themselves. And you can't see it at all on the video, so they're not drawing freehand. I'd just like to add that the reason that artists do this, and the reason I do it as well, is to rub out these lines. It's not so that you can't see them. It's we rub these lines out so that you don't get too much pencil lead underneath your coloured pencils or your paint or whatever medium you're using. So it's not very nice having the pencil come through. So that's the reason, or that's a good reason to rub it out, to make it so there's less graphite on the paper. Anyway, with this first circle and this blending, I'm using Caran d'Ache Luminance, and I'm starting off and I'm going to do a burnt sienna circle, and I'm going to be using a burnt sienna 10%, which is what you can see me using now, and then I'm going to go over it with a burnt sienna 50%. Once I've gone over with the 50%, I'm going to use a burnt sienna, the normal burnt sienna pencil, which is the one you can see me with now. The reason I'm using these three pencils, the 10%, the 50 and the normal, is to just show you the different, how much difference there is between each pencil, the difference in the shades. And this is a good technique to use if you're blending very smooth animal fur, or using it for a portrait of somebody with a darker coloured skin. So yeah, what I'm basically doing is I'm putting a layer of the 10% down, then I'm going over half the circle with the 50%, and then just under half the circle with the normal burnt sienna. This is to give the impression that the left hand side is a little darker than the right, i.e. the light source is coming from the right. And what I'm going to do with this first circle is I'm going to do a layer of 10%, 50 and then normal, and then I'm going to go in with a light burnish with a white. And the reason I'm going to go in with a light burnish is so then I can put the layers on top again, the 10, the 50 and the normal, and then burnish proper. Now for those of you or any beginners out there that don't know what burnishing is putting a lot of pressure on the pencil to blend all the layers that you've done underneath it. So for instance, at the end of this, I'll have a layer of 10%, 50 and normal of burnt sienna, and then I'll have a light covering of white in with that, and then I'll have the three layers again, the 10, the 15 and the normal, so that's 7 layers, and then I'll go on with the white for the 8th layer, but I'll press really hard, and this will blend all those 7 layers together, and you'll see that happening in a while. Now I'm just going in again with the 10%, just to darken in that right side a little more so it's not too light. Now the reason I'm doing this with the first one is because what a lot of people normally do, they get in X amount of layers, so 3 layers or 6 layers or 9 layers or 15 layers, whatever amount you're comfortable with and whatever works for you. A lot of artists do use a lot of layers, up to 20 layers, and then they burnish with white. But what I'm doing with this, or what I hope to achieve with this, is I'm just going in lightly with the white here. It's a sort of semi-burnish. It's not a total burnish. It's sort of a, you can see how high up I'm holding the pencil, not really low down for the pressure, but quite high up. So I'm going over those 3 layers now with the white. And what this will do, it'll do a slight blend of those 3 layers. And then when I go over the top again with the next 3 layers of the burnt sienna, it'll cover more of the paper. It'll cover those little holes that you sometimes get, those little white gaps in the paper, because you haven't put enough layers down. And that's what happens if you don't put enough layers down. You don't cover the surface or the tooth of the paper. And depending on what paper you use, you'll have different outcomes. Incidentally, the paper I'm using for this is Bristol Smooth. So this is a really smooth paper, and it's quite easy to burnish and to blend with. As you can see, I'm going back in again now with the burnt sienna for the darker areas on the left. And another reason that I've done this light burnish first before I burnish is because it gives a really nice textured effect. It covers most of the tooth of the paper, but it does leave little tiny gaps. And I'll show you later on in the video what I mean. And this is really excellent when you're drawing flesh for getting the pores in there. You know, the pores in the skin, and you can get pores as in P-O-R-E-S. And you can do dimples and pimples and all kinds of stuff with it, and you can go in again with a darker pencil, and you can go around some of the little white gaps to give that effect, that highlighted effect of a pimple, and it can be quite useful. So that's the reason I'm doing this on the first circle. On the second circle that I'll be doing, you'll see me just go in and burnish, and you'll see the difference with that. And then what I'm going to do on the third circle, I'm going to actually start with a base layer of a marker, so you can see what colour pencils are like on top of that marker. And also in the last one with the marker, I'll be using Caran d'Ache and a mix of Polychromos as well. So Faber-Castell Polychromos coloured pencils. But on this first one, I am only using the Caran d'Ache Luminance Burnt Sienna 10%, then the 50%, then the normal Burnt Sienna, and the white to burnish. I thought I'd keep this at more or less normal pace, just so you can actually see what I'm doing, and you can give it a try for yourself if you're a beginner. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm no expert on coloured pencils. I'm pretty much a beginner myself, really. I suppose a lot of people watching this might think that's a bit aloof and say, God, no, you're not a beginner because you've done so many pencil drawings. Well, I have done about just over 15 coloured pencil drawings, I think, but the majority of them have been anime or superhero based. I haven't, and I've done a few animals, but I haven't really done a lot of portraits or skin textures, and this is why this is a good practice for me as well. And I'm still learning myself. I'm still a beginner in that sense, and so I thought it'd be a good idea for you to see what I'm doing in real time. So you know, you can hopefully learn something from it yourself as well while I'm learning myself. Yeah, so that's one thing I wanted to move on to. A lot of you know that I like to draw portraits in pencil. I would like to do portraits in coloured pencil, so this is why I want to start practicing these skin tones and skin textures in future videos, and this is also another reason why I've labelled this part 1. In future videos I'm going to do different papers, i.e. different textures, and see how that comes out and see what happens, see what I can do with that. Usually, like for instance, when I draw animals, which is going to be, and my next drawing is going to be an animal in coloured pencil, I like to use watercolour paper, and I like to use white spirits to blend instead of burnishing. This Bristol Smooth paper I'm using here is fantastic for burnishing. As you can see here, where I'm going over with the layers again, when you know that you're coming up to completion and when you know you're getting near to that white burnishing at the end, which I'm about to do, with the burnt sienna 10% there, I was actually burnishing with that a little as well. Sort of a meeting of the darker colours, if you like. So I was using the burnt sienna 10% to bring the burnt sienna and the burnt sienna 50% together and blend them a little. And then you've got that smooth 10% over the top. And then when I go in with the white now, it'll blend that and the other layers together. So you'll get all three colours blending in together. And you can sort of see that happening now. But because I used that light burnish first, you can still see, not so well at the moment from this distance on the camera, but I will zoom in and show you at the end. But you can still see little holes, what I was talking, you know, you can use for pores and pimples and blemishes and things like that. It comes in really useful. Sorry for the not quite circle that I've drawn there. I haven't really paid that much attention with staying in the lines that much. This tutorial is never intended to be a definitive way of blending. As I said, I'm still learning myself. I'm still a beginner myself, so you know, hopefully we can learn together. And I'll probably be able to do this again in the future, a lot more successfully, and hopefully I'll be able to see the difference myself, and you'll be able to see the difference, how much better I've got or improved in the future. I'm going to be doing a lot more drawings of animals in the future, a lot more pencil portraits of non-famous people. I don't really want to talk about Article 13 now because it's getting on my back a bit, and I'm getting a bit fed up of all that and all the talk of Brexit as well. I had a letter through the post the other day saying that Brexit is going to affect me living in Holland as a British citizen. So yeah, I don't know what the criteria is going to be, but I don't think it's going to be quite as drastic as being kicked out of Holland, but we'll see where that goes anyway. But yeah, like I said, I'm a bit fed up of all this Article 13 and Brexit bullshit, to be honest. So back to the drawing. Right, on this second circle, I'm going to be using Caran d'Ache Illuminance again, but this is burnt ochre. Now this can be used for a more Asian or Oriental skin tone, shall we say. Also a lovely colour. I love these pencils. They're so soft and so smooth and so beautiful to work with. And on this Bristol Smooth as well. Gosh, they really do feel creamy and smooth. So that was the 10% I was using, and now I'm going in with the 50% burnt ochre. As you can see, this is a little faster than the first tutorial. That's because I've speeded up a bit. I think this is ×2 or ×3. You get the general gist of what I'm doing now, and it's not speeded up too much, so you can still see what I'm doing. I did say to you that I was going to not do the light burnish on this one, but proved myself wrong there. But that wasn't really a light burnish, that was more of just sort of putting a light layer of white in with the burnt ochre 10%, just to give it that light source on the right again. Now I'm going in with the burnt ochre. Sorry, did I say sienna then? I'm so sorry. These pencils are burnt ochre, the 1050 and the normal, along with the white. The first drawing was the burnt sienna. So these are the ochre. The first were the sienna, and these ones are the ochre. So apologies if I slip up or say otherwise. But now you can see I'm going in with the white. I'm burnishing there. You saw a little brush come onto the screen there to brush away some pencil marks, because when you're burnishing you do get crumbly bits of pencil breaking off because you're putting a lot of pressure on. You can see I'm holding the pencil a lot closer to the tip. That's to put more pressure on, and you do get bits, and you can see me brushing it away there. It's always best to use a brush. You can see some of those marks on the left there, what I was talking about, what you can use for blemishes. Look, little pock marks, little spot marks, pimples. Comes in really handy. And this is with a paper, Bristol Smooth, without any tuff. So you can imagine what it's like on a watercolour paper where you've got lots of tuff. Then you can really work with texture. But this third circle now, I'm colouring in with a skin white marker. And this is a Touch New marker, one of the ones I got from Wish, and it's a 131 skin white. So now I've got a skin white base for this one. And now I'm going in with an anthraquinoid pink. Say that when you're pissed. Yeah, this is anthraquinoid pink. And then a cinnamon. And as you can see, I've changed to the polychromos now. The anthraquinoid pink was a Caran d'Ache. The cinnamon was a Faber-Castell polychromos, as is the light flesh, which I go in for the lighter part of this drawing. There you go. So yeah, so for this one then, it was the skin white marker to begin with, and then I've gone in with the anthraquinoid pink, the Caran d'Ache, and then I've gone in with a cinnamon and a light flesh polychromos. And then I'm burnishing again with a white, and look how lovely that's come out. That's a lovely flesh colour, that is. And there I've given you what I've used underneath the drawings. Sorry for the blodge on cinnamon. I went to write it as can never remember if it's one N and two M's or two N's and one M. So sorry about that. That does say cinnamon. Yeah, but as you can see, burnt sienna 10%, 50% normal, burnt ochre 10%, 50% normal, and then anthraquinoid pink, cinnamon and light flesh on top of the skin white marker base. Not forgetting as well that the cinnamon and the light flesh were polychromos and not Caran d'Ache. All the other pencils are Caran d'Ache luminance. The cinnamon and the light flesh are polychromos. So hopefully now I'm going to, if I remember rightly, yes, I'm going to zoom in a bit and show you these a bit closer. Now on this first one, for the darker skin tone, can you see those little white sort of holes and blemishes I was talking about that you can use for pores? Not so much on the burnt ochre, you can still see them though. And then it's even less really on the pink because that really smoothed out. But yeah, that's the end of this part 1 tutorial for blending colour pencils. I hope it was helpful for some of you, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much to my subscribers. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and like I said, I will see you all on the next one. Ta-ra.